Dude, extremes are f***ing extreme.
Underestimate would be a word I use.
As advertised.
Yeah.
So we did our first extreme, and we decided, because we're geniuses, that it should be Shinryu. By the way, we started min-eye level, no echo. And if you notice, I said we started.
4 hours of minimum eye level, no echo. And then at 1 a.m. your time, after being blasted by bolts from the sky while also chained together, at 33%, we decided, you know, we might try out that echo business just to see. And only 2 stacks, like, that's not bad. There are some words I would use here, such as a lot,
excessive,
intense,
some might say masochistic,
busy,
might even say the most fun I've had in this game so far.
I would agree. I love working within the confines of the game, and you could really feel those confines during this. The camera only goes back so far. The visual field is not big enough when there's stuff behind you and stuff in front of you and stuff at your feet and wings shooting their own lasers and Caspar. Like, I felt I was playing StarCraft, and I started boxing my eyes like you do in StarCraft. Macro, Caspar, my bar, left, right, up, down, like trying my buffs there, but like just my timers, my cooldowns, my dots on the boss. It was insane.
Yeah, I became fairly robotic by the end, which I loved. It felt so awesome. I wasn't darting as much as you, because as a tank, you don't need to worry about running stuff out until like one very specific part. So I was mostly just, I'm darting between the enemy list and my abilities for the most part. And then whenever I would see something casting on the enemy list that I knew I then needed to look out for, then my eyes would dart to the actual game itself. And it was, I really got in a flow state. It got really intense. I rallied on that like last 45 minutes, but I would say the 30 minutes that preceded that, I really started to fall off my game. We had some rough runs there.
Man, there was one particular cursed run where I died 5 times, just chaining. Every time I got back up, just chaining. Hey, now's a great time to bring up our awesome crew that we ran with. Like, shout out to our community. Shout out to everybody who participated last night. It was amazing.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of fine folks in any B-roll today of this fight, because we ran with the same 6 other people the entire night. We didn't do signups. We're just like, hey, if you want to come, here's a code. Good luck. Know what you're signing up for. So bring your A game. Oh my God, dude. It took me back. Before I go down memory lane, if you dig Kyle and my work, thank our members and our patrons for supporting us. Both get access to our exclusive Discord channels. Go check out supportourbromance.com for our Patreon, or join our YouTube membership right here. Both help us out. Thanks for the support, everybody. It hasn't been that long since I've essentially quit WoW. No, I'm going to start playing again because I'm excited for Wrath. But it's been a while since I haven't played World of Warcraft, but not that long. But it's been a very long time since I've been a serious raider. So we're talking 2010, 2011. Wrath of the Lich King was the last time I was raiding 4 nights a week. You and I don't know if people have noticed, we're pretty close friends. I like playing games with you. I've never gotten to raid with you. This is 100% the most difficult co-op gaming experience we've engaged in together.
And I needed it. So far, the MSQ trials have been tame. There was Titan Hard, which sticks out in my memory a little bit, which we did on minimum eye level. There was Nidhogg on minimum eye level, which we didn't know any indicators for at the time. They were brand new for us. But this was, without a doubt, the most insane thing we've done in the game. And it was so cool to feel pushed, but in such a different way than my World of Warcraft experience. My big raiding time when I was hardcore was Gruul's Lair, Karazhan, Burning Crusade raids. And every time a raid fell apart, people got too grumpy. Oh no, we go to Karazhan, a much more intimate experience, a 10-man raid, just going in there and feeling a lot closer to everybody. This was that. The 8-man count really makes you feel like everybody's important and everybody has to pull their weight, but that's not everything. Particularly on minimum eye level, like gear doesn't really matter too much here. It is skill, it is the dance. And tanks, DPS, and healers all have their own mechanics to dance with, to contend with. On top of the raid-wide mechanics, would it be a raid?
Technically a trial, but as far as I'm concerned, like if I'm above the standard dungeon size, it's a raid to me. As far as I'm concerned, it's raid content. All of this is raid content. That's why it's hard. It's end game. There's, at the time, if this was current, end game loot to be had. In my mind, again, as a student of other MMOs, that's raiding to me.
It's tough to put into words just how well crafted this sort of strategic content is. Like, I am honestly blown away. Because the group is so small and so tactical, we're all watching out for each other's backs, all trying to solve the puzzle together. And with everyone contending with their own issues, with their own mechanics, and the healers need to do DPS, and everyone need to target the right thing at the right time. It just has a sense of strategy and camaraderie that I've never experienced in an MMO, which pushes this less into MMO content for me, more into just co-op gaming. Like, this was just co-op gaming experience rather than an instanced trial.
That's where I come from. And so to me, this does feel like it, because I primarily rated in World of Warcraft as a 10-man. So we're only 2 players off. And with your fond memories of Karazhan, I'm surprised it doesn't feel a little similar to you. Like the shot calling, which was me, which I didn't really do. Not in my like hardcore raids. I ran a lot of pickup raids with my friends that I would shot call on, but like my progression raid, I was never the shot caller for that. But it was fun to do it again, and like all of that, it feels to me that's my warm MMO blanket. Like that's why it became such a serious hobby for me, because that type of challenging content really got its hooks in me, and Shinryu is one of the better ones I've ever played. Like, it's right up there. This was such a cool fight. I'd really like to talk also about just the extreme system as a whole, because of course there's got to be a lore reason for why this is even happening, because it's not canon, Kyle.
I love the excuse here. Some said this was Yoshi P's NPC in-game. I could see it a little bit. I love the idea that a bard is spinning a more epic tale, and that is our excuse for why this story exists. We're in a dream, bring it. Like, in a game where lore matters so much, I'm glad we can step outside of it to create these outrageous scenarios. And yeah, this probably shouldn't be something you subject every single player going through this game too, and saying, hey, you cannot defeat Stormblood the expansion and move on in your story until you defeat Shinryu in his domain in this mode. Might be a little much.
It's interesting for a game where the predominant advertised point by its ravenous fan base, not a cult, is that the story's really good. Like, the story's amazing. It's one of the best stories out there. It just happens to be in an MMORPG. Folks take the MSQ and they take the narrative of Final Fantasy XIV very seriously because it's really freaking good. And the game takes itself seriously for the most part. There's humor even interjected into the MSQ, but they're not afraid to give themselves, like, to however they need to make it make sense within the realm of this game, to just kind of have fun with it and amp things up to 11. I always come back to the fit and finish of this game, and this is another place where, like, they could have just, like, here you go, you beat normal, here's extreme, go have fun. They're like, no, let's add an NPC, let's give them a backstory, this is why, here's some in-game reasoning for why you're going to go do a non-canon fight that's harder than the original. This is great. They didn't have to do it, but they did.
And I wanted Shinryu to be our first extreme. I did not know the level we were signing up for compared to something like a Realm Reborn trial or maybe even a Heavensward trial. So far, I haven't felt that challenge, that need to improve. My samurai rotation isn't great, but it's been serviceable up to this point. I need a game to say, no, you're not good enough before I myself will improve.
Like when you were having, so you've been recently trying to make the switch to controller, which could be its whole other video. We're not going to go too deep on controller here, but as a result of that, you were playing on controller and you were having some targeting issues. So you're having trouble targeting the heart. And boy, howdy, Kyle, your damage is great because when you were not targeting the heart, it was very apparent.
Samurais do a lot. It was very cool to be tested in that way. And yes, all the advertisements they put on TV for this game is somebody waving a controller in Spider-Man's face. I want to see what it's all about. And honestly, for Samurai, the rhythm of the various sticker combinations is just way more natural on controller. My fingers flow better, but I didn't know how to change targets because I've never been tested in that way outside of dropping target and hitting the nearest melee thing. And Shinryu had his heart and himself in the same space. And in fact, himself was the closer target. So I couldn't drop target easily to get on the heart. So I learned a lot last night about how to play this game, not just for controller, overall.
I only bring it up to complement your damage. I am not running mods, so I have no way to see how much damage you're doing. But I could see how much damage you weren't doing to the heart, because boy, when you were on it, that thing melted.
I need to lose in order to improve. And this was so satisfying to me. And I think the fact that at hour 4 we turned on Echo is just that much more of a compliment to the game, that a bunch of noobs like us couldn't wander into your game with your mechanics and these difficulties and be like, I've played World of Warcraft, and just destroy it.
Let's just nerd out. Let's just freaking nerd out on Shinryu for a bit here, because this fight, this is some top tier MMO bossage here, buddy.
The mechanics are so thick and busy, but there's a rhythm to them. There's a slight 50-50 randomization in some abilities, but once you start to get it down, the early phase turns into a cakewalk, while the later phase is a combination of the early phase mechanics combined in nefarious ways.
Oh, totally. Yeah, well, I think a lot of good fights, a lot of good boss fights are that way. It's a good frustration, if that makes sense. I get this frustration on boss fights that have late phases because my brain starts to go, oh, when you fail, like it's maybe, say it was like our 5th time wiping on phase 3. I just want to go back to phase 3 because I just want to practice that. But it's not how it works. Like, part of it is making sure you master those phases before it to get there, and then you still need to have the wherewithal and the presence of mind to master phase 3. All right, so I did something kind of interesting for this, Kyle. So since we just kind of threw ourselves into it, we didn't study up for it. We did have some questions answered in the moment from our party, but we didn't study this up like I would for a WoW fight. After the fact, I went back and looked up a guide because I'm like, all right, what did I completely misunderstand? Now that we've got it down, I want to go see a breakdown of this. And the guide I looked at broke it down into 4 phases, which I didn't even think of. My brain kind of goes first phase, and then once we grab his back and fly and do the active time maneuver, then that's phase 2. But it makes sense because the guide I saw broke it down to phase 1 is what you assume phase 1 is. Phase 2 is the ads phase. Phase 3 is once you cross the tail bridge, which is so cool. It's so cool that you get to run across the tail. And then phase 4 is when you jump on Shinryu's back, kill the wings, and then finish the fight, essentially.
I did the same, and that's when I became shocked by how much healers were doing. Like, healers do not just go into this special little cubby. Thank you for playing healer. We love you so much. Just heal everybody, okay? And do a little DPS if you can. No, they have brutal side mechanics to deal with, in addition to healing everybody up and checks on that, just raw healing checks that are splashing the entire crew, or they have to get certain health percentages up to a certain amount in certain mechanics. Like, brutal. The tanks have their own mechanics, which is, that's a known thing in MMOs. Like, tanks always have to deal with extra stuff.
I guess I have tank specific mechanics, but really I haven't had to deal with multi-tank mechanics. I know there's been at least one tank swap, I think, in one of the Evilise fights. I don't remember what one. Shinryu is now the thing I've run the most. In one night, Shinryu is the thing I have run the most. So, my knowledge of this is so much greater than anything else we've done as a result of that. But Yeah, I struggle to think of an example of a multi-tank mechanic, but Shinryu has multiple multi-tank mechanics. And so that was a learning curve that also felt comfortable because it's something I used to deal with a lot in World of Warcraft. So, hey, you want to know the first thing that I completely didn't get?
Bring it.
So in phase 1, Shinryu's auto attacks hit the highest aggro and off tank.
Oh, that was all the lasers. Okay. I like that they actually made laser sounds.
Dude, the laser sounds were so distracting.
There were lasers combined with bigger lasers. Well, there were a lot of things we misunderstood, such as the health of the heart and the health of the tail and how that related to abilities. That was more of a way to deal big damage, it seemed, to Shinryu and make sure that other abilities maybe didn't trigger or that something bad didn't happen, like the platform breaking wrongly. It was actually the corrupted ether gauge that was most dangerous, or at least signified other abilities going off.
That plus hearts at 100, and the heart is still up when one of these raid-wide AoE spells goes off, you're dead.
When that damage to the heart went back to Shinryu, so there's no reason not to do it, even if it was mechanic-based. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, even the DPS in this way, the fight was designed that DPS were helping, not just killing. Like, we had targets that weren't adds that directly affected how the boss was going to work for the tanks and the healers. It's all interwoven. And that's what I loved about this so much. That's what made it a strategy game rather than a gear-based RPG.
Burning chains, I feel like we picked up pretty quick. I was unsure of how to break them at first. Have we seen chains before? I feel like we've seen chains before.
We've seen tethers. I don't know if we've directly seen distance-based breaking chains, but the trick was that you had to wait for them to spawn. Not only the graphic would appear on you, but you had to wait for it to connect. And should you run away in advance, that would be the length of the chain you now had to break. And should you have gone too far, the chain was too long.
It's distance traveled, not max distance. So if you start really far apart, you can actually, you could leave yourself not enough room to reach the distance traveled you need to. Also, I noticed while going through guides, the first tail slam apparently always goes on a healer. That's from what I've read. Didn't realize that. Like the very first tail slam to come out in this, I guess it's always on a healer. And I got lucky. Poor Azumi, the off tank, all last night. Azumi got it almost every time. I think I got it 4 times, and we did a lot of attempts. That's a panic, by the way, when you get that thing.
Yeah, you gotta get it out of there. Otherwise, you kill everybody. Like that's the one person can ruin the raid. Well, the bombs later on, but
there's a couple of those. Levenbolt, my favorite chair at IKEA. And that was one that we struggled with for a long time. I think it was a while before we realized that Levenbolt was this big AoE because there's a lot of visual busyness. Even if you have your friend's spells turned down, just Shinryu itself, there's a lot of visual stuff going on. I at no point noticed that Levenbolt had a radius around me. But once we started doing that, that was really good. But that was one that even bit us in the ass later on when we started getting tired. And if you miss one, that and icicles. Those are 2 things that you probably master first. And it's also the first thing you're going to forget or miss. And it's going to get you later.
It was particularly villainous when the icicles were combined. So we were having to, in a hallway, spread out.
I knew that you got an Ak. I didn't know it had a different name. So Ak Morn is the one that hits tanks. And Ak Rai is the one that randomly hits a non-tank, I guess. And do you get marked? I don't think you get marked. I think it just randomly hits a person.
Right, so we would all spread out and try to make sure it wasn't on top of you guys, the tanks who were already being lasered, and not on top of our friends. Basically, just wiggle constantly. Just always be moving, and on Samurai, that's a little easier because I have so many instant casts until I invest in my final finisher.
Yeah, that was scary. That was the one where I've just went, all right, I don't care if we're running this blind. Will someone explain what this thing is that keeps killing me? Because I didn't know. I didn't know it was a tank stacking mechanic. Oh, Akmorn. I had nightmares about that after this evening.
Mine was Levenbolt. That was the nightmare scenario for me. The spread no water compared to the in the water. And the water was left by a tidal wave, which hit you from the side or back. But hey, arm's length. I was like doing work last night and allowing me to just stand in the boss and keep fighting.
Oh, yeah. This is the most I've ever used arm's length. I always forget about arm's length. Oh, by the way, tidal wave hits like a truck.
Yeah, well, that's part of that healing check, right? Like, they got to get you back up, but it's also our job across the entire team to make sure we're not taking unnecessary damage, so that when the heal check hits, we don't all die. But 2, you're not overtaxing these healers who also have to run out of tail, who also are chained, and helping out the tanks who are trying to mitigate through the damage.
And then there's just what I call butt clench, which is Diamond Dust. When Diamond Dust would happen in phase 1, oh my god. What a cheeks clencher.
And chains for the healer during that.
Yes, guaranteed on the healers. And while it's happening, it is now frosted ground, which means you're going to slide uncontrolled. Well, a predetermined distance in the first direction you move. If you move.
The one I had to ask about was the tethered purple dragon heads that would come down and connect a laser to a player. I was desperately trying to slash these things or target these things and figure out what I should be doing about it. Another heal check. Got to get those players up to full so they go away. Otherwise, big damage for everybody. My mitigation is very tiny on Samurai, but all that adds up because otherwise those healers are overtaxed. And then they don't get to do the DPS, which helps with the heart. I feel like I've said 100 times now, but it's so interwoven. It just really blew my mind.
At phase 2, the whole thing is just a butt clencher. Those ads have a tank buster that took me a while to realize. Because at first there was so much going on that I just wanted to make sure everything was gathered and healers weren't getting hit.
Oh, and they were doing AoEs and little ground effects inside the piles while the explosions were going out after we were knocked off the primary platform and after we did the active time maneuver, which we learned you could use more than one button for, which nice.
I never knew. I've been single-clicking active time maneuvers this whole time.
I full-blown, like, Mario Party turned my controller sideways so I could do the double thumbs.
What you don't want to do is hit a button that brings up a menu. So stay away from the right side of your keyboard unless you've like done custom binds. But I don't think you ever got calm about the raid-wide AoE towards the end of the ad platform phase.
I hated that bomb proximity drop thing. Like we had 5 bombs on 8 players, so you couldn't do all corners, and the non-corner one just stressed me out. And then we all were in the overlapping perfect Venn diagram of the reticules going out. Shinryu was making eggs, which that's a made-up story, so we don't need to think about it too much.
Well, hold on, because Shinryu is also Xeno, so is Xeno laying eggs?
You know, it's all made up, you know, the embellishment. He's embellishing the story, and it sounds cooler, right? Like Godzilla, Matthew Broderick, like just don't think about it too much.
My favorite spectacle of this entire fight is when Shinryu slams the tail down at the end of the ad phase, and you have to run across the tail. And the first, I think, like 5 times this happened. For some reason, I had sprint on cooldown. And so I got hit by the laser like the first 5 times, which is fine. It freezes you for a moment, and I did survive it. I don't know if it's tank privilege. I'm assuming part of it is. But I did make it over to the other side, and it seemed okay if you got hit by at least one of them. It kind of freezes you in place for a little bit. What a spectacle. Just like running across Shinryu's tail to jump to the platform, and then you get down, and Shinryu is completely up on the platform, walking around. He's just this, oh my God. It's so good, dude. It's so freaking good.
That's how you want to throw down, with him in the center being the big dragon. But it was so maddening that he was untargetable if you got over there early, because he's just sitting there. And then you just have to wait and hope that everyone can get healed up enough before the real terror starts here. And for you, it sounded like the Terra Slash was just chunking.
Oh, it absolutely does chunk. Once you get it down, though, it's not too stressful because it's pretty. If it's on you, your job is to just pop mitigation, and it's the other tank's job to taunt or provoke, to put it in Final Fantasy XIV terms, while it's casting, not till after. That's a mistake I made the first time I ever saw this Terra Slash. You got to taunt while it's casting. It will not make Shinryu immediately change targets and make it hit you, though. It will finish casting Terra Slash on the current tank, which would be the primary tank at the time, but then Shinryu will immediately change to the off tank that didn't just get hit by this, didn't just get chunked, and you know, start quote unquote white damaging you, which white damage from Shinryu is an understatement.
And next up comes the most diabolical moment in this raid. Chains and Atomic Ray. Find your buddy. We had a pretty good system worked out in the end, though.
At the end, yeah, we did a good job. We marked everybody. I didn't realize that, again, looking at guides after this, I didn't realize it's always DPS. It's just the 4 DPS get marked. And so you pair 1 to 1 tank, 1 to another tank, 1 to 1 healer, 1 to the other healer. We got buddied up.
Naturally.
Oh, dude, when we started getting it, this was a serious bonding moment. This was an in-game bonding moment.
Running together, breaking the chains, taking the lasers together. And by the way, this is where the designers were straight up evil. They were aware of what players would do, which is hide under the boss. So they put what's known as a doom puddle under Shinryu, so that should you want to go under there, you would die within seconds, just flat dead, which means we always had to be on the outside of this boss and always vulnerable to what he was doing. Well, you know, the DPS, like, usually you want to be, like, in there, like, as close to the center as possible, avoiding what might be, you know, doing it blind, right? Like, tail swipes and claw cleaves and, you know, dragons do AoE things with their autos all the time. So I thought, hey, why don't I get under the dragon? Genius idea, and deal with him in there.
And then they combined Ice Storm with both Hypernova and Levenbolt, where you need to do completely opposite things in opposite order to survive it. That was evil, but once we got that was pretty manageable.
In the final moment, in an ability apparently called Tidal Wave again, a circle appeared on the ground, and all I could yell is just follow Lost Mythics. Surely they know where we're going, and this sent us launching on top of the dragon.
So it's not just Tidal Wave. I went and looked this up. So it's because, again, the first time we made it to this was when we cleared. So we didn't see this multiple times. The right wing and the left wing start casting as well. The right wing casts Hellfire. The left wing casts Judgment Bolt.
Perfect.
And Shinryu himself is casting Tidal Wave. So while we're on the back, we are actually targeting the wings, which I didn't even realize. I was just smashing tab and hitting whatever I could hit. But then I noticed the text come up like left wing like crumbles or whatever the text is. And so in the moment I was like, oh shit, is that what's going on here? We're targeting the wings. But going back after the fact and like reading how the fight actually behaves, if any of these finish casting, it is game over. Any of them. So you got to take out both the wings. And then when you're done with that, that's why we jumped down, because then you can start killing Shinryu before Tidal Wave finishes. And that's how you finish the fight.
And that final like 2% was long. It was scary. We were wailing and my fingers were dead. After 4.5 hours, we did it.
My eyes hurt. I think I might invest in those blue light glasses after this.
I'm going for a full like HUD redo, a complete makeover of how I'm laying out things. Like, this taught me so much about what to expect. And of course I want to try others. Like, I want to dive straight into the Yatsuyu fight. There's an extreme pull of tribute, which I haven't heard a thing about. So I don't know if it's great or not. I guess, hey dude, there's extreme emanation. We could see if like emanation gets any better for you. I don't know if you'd want to be in that cave long enough to find out.
I saw a lot of chatter after we finished this. I was enjoying reading our Discord, and there was a lot of chatter where a lot of people I think were in agreement that Shinryu is one of the more transformative extremes, that it's quite different. And I would love to put that question out to everyone watching this video. What do you think? Do you think what is special about Shinryu? To me, what I've taken away from what I've read in our community is that it's one of the most different ones, and it's also one of the harder ones. I guess a lot of people consider this like almost a diet savage. Like it starts to get into that territory, is what I've heard from some folks. We haven't tried a savage yet, so I don't have a frame of reference for that. But to me, what I've picked up is that Shinryu really is one of the more special extremes. Just overall, it is a little more difficult than your average extreme and quite a bit different than your average extreme. All I know is it was a S-tier freaking boss design. Like, the mechanics, they were diabolical, difficult, but once you knew what to look for, easy to understand. I was so mad. I was so mad at the icicles the first time they happened, because they happened on the complete opposite ass end of the stage. And I'm like, how are you ever supposed to see these things or know they're coming? And that's like you were talking about how you're completely redoing your UI. I have never paid attention to the enemy list, but I did after that. Because once I realized, oh, I can see Icicle channeling if I have my enemy list somewhere I can keep an eye on it easily. And once I see that happening, I'm just going to rotate my camera around and keep an eye on it, and I'll just scoot a little bit. Suddenly, Icicle became the easiest thing to deal with. Something that, like, in the opening, like, our first few pulls, I was like, this is a big piece of bullshit. I've ever seen in a boss fight.
And because it had rhythm, you could turn that camera and then get back to the heart. But doing that without add-ons, working inside the confines of the game, was a really unique challenge.
So we're going to break everyone's heart and just delay Shadowbringers further and just do a bunch of extremes, yeah?
I am curious about Savage. I'm terrified. I need some time. But I do want to go check out X-Death. That's definitely on the list.
X-Death gets mentioned a lot.
I just am really looking forward to getting good. Right now I'm spending a lot of time looking at my own hotbars, trying to work my stickers, just use my character properly. I also am really excited to get to Endgame and see Gear have a play in this, like fight something and be like, oh man, I should go level up and work on the outside, bring that back to the team and have that static experience. That's really exciting. Plus all the other abilities I'm going to have. I'm going to have like 15 other buttons. There's a lot of mastery to go.
It was really fun upping my game alongside you. I'm hungry, man. I'm like MMO hungry. I want to do more of these. Well, this is damn impressive. I look forward to doing more streams with you. But we do have Shadowbringers to get to.